PlayStation Home shuts down on March 31st, after a perpetual beta lasting for almost 6.5 years. Over the next few weeks, I'll be looking at what PlayStation Home was originally meant to be, what it became over the years, and what remains of it today, standing at death's door. This week, we'll be looking at what PlayStation Home was intended to be. Home was first announced in 2007 at the height of the virtual worlds craze, with games like Second Life and There finding huge success on the PC, and more importantly, an enormous amount of media attention. At the time, some were even comparing these virtual worlds to things like the fledgling Facebook and the dominant but waning MySpace, predicting that things like Second Life would end up coming out on top. Within the world of Second Life, huge corporations like IBM had bought virtual property. Reuters had hired a digital correspondent to report on the virtual world, and clothing companies like American Apparel had spent thousands of dollars designing virtual clothing and establishing storefronts. Some countries even went as far as to establish embassies. So it's easy to see why Sony saw potential in the virtual world space. No one had done it on consoles yet, and seemingly Sony meant to be the first. At GDC 2007, after months of rumors, they officially announced PlayStation Home. At the time, it was touted by Sony executive Phil Harrison as part of something they were calling Game 3.0, with an emphasis on community and customization. After a user customized how their avatar would look, the home experience would start in a place called the Central Plaza, where people could meet up with others who they could ostensibly become friends with. From there, they could bring these new friends to their invite-only personal space, which they could decorate to their heart's content. In addition to this personal space and the aforementioned Central Plaza, PlayStation Home would also include theaters in which to watch game and movie trailers, spaces in which you could play arcade games as well as more traditional games like pool, but most importantly for the PlayStation business plan, they would partner with other companies who would create special branded spaces like those that were so prevalent in Second Life. Also customizable by the user was their Hall of Fame, which would contain virtual three-dimensional trophies, representations of a user's achievements within PS3 games, seemingly an attempt to do something slightly different with the achievement system popularized by the 360. Interestingly enough, this was the first mention of trophies that Sony made publicly, and while it may have initially been intended to be a PlayStation Home system exclusively, these more than likely evolved into the trophies that now exist on the PS3 and the PS4. Not content with just using a regular menu, a virtual PSP would provide the means for the user to travel between the service's disparate parts and change settings. And finally, the most important thing for Sony's virtual world, like any virtual world, was going to be communication, and the service promised to provide users the means to communicate with each other through either text or voice chat. There was one feature, though, that seems silly to even promise in the first place. During the onstage demo, Harrison showed his avatar loading his own pictures and movies from his PS3 hard drive into PlayStation Home. He even proceeded to take an image of the crowd and upload it to prove that it was actually happening because it was clearly so crazy. Now, this would obviously be a very serious problem for Sony if it had ever gone live, with people streaming full-size movies off of their PS3s into their personal space, so unsurprisingly, the feature never actually saw the light of day. Like any major product announcement, there are a bevy of interviews that took place right after the announcement. And an interesting thing was that they suggested that not only was Home a reaction to virtual worlds like Second Life, but also to Nintendo's Mii system. In 2007, both Microsoft and Sony were a bit distraught at the unexpected success of the Wii, and they were both rushing to find solutions to try and draw in the broader customer base that the Wii enjoyed. Now, this would ultimately manifest itself on the Xbox 360 as the Avatar system, but the Sony solution in PlayStation Home was admittedly far more ambitious. Originally scheduled for release in October of 2007, the service instead went through multiple delays, and its initially limited closed beta was expanded over and over until practically everyone who wanted an invite had gotten one. PlayStation Home finally went into public beta in 2008, lacking the trophy room and playing of external media within the service, but otherwise relatively close to the initially announced goals. The problem with Home, though, even at the outset, even before it actually came out, was that so much of the service was reactionary. The core experience looked to replicate the success of Second Life. The Hall of Fame attempted to improve on Microsoft's successful achievement system, and Sony execs spent an impressive amount of time between 2007 and 2008, claiming in interviews that people wanted to be represented more realistically, unlike the cartoony Miis that Nintendo had made so popular. One last final and very prevalent note for this period of PlayStation Home's life. By the time PlayStation Home was finally released in 2008, virtual worlds were on the decline. While Second Life had enjoyed a huge boom in 2007, they had gone from 450,000 to 4 million users in that year alone, though that doesn't really tell us how many people were active. 2008 had resulted in a huge loss of press attention. There were almost 40% fewer references to it in the news that year. In addition, many of the corporations, like IBM and American Apparel, that had established virtual companies were beginning to lose interest, selling off their investments and basically cashing out. The thing was, PlayStation Home was entering the arena just as the arena itself was beginning to lose its relevance. Join me next week to look at how PlayStation Home evolved over the years, conforming to a constantly changing gaming landscape. In the meantime, watch some of my other videos, or if you like what I'm doing, please like, comment, and subscribe.